Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this event organized by the Institute for Electronic Arts, part of the School of Art and Design at Alfred University. The IEA is dedicated to supporting contemporary artists through its primary focus on residency programs. These residencies provide artists with the opportunity to engage in vital research using electronic media, new technologies, and print media within fine arts disciplines, while also benefiting local, regional, and global communities. In addition to residencies, the IEA supports evolving electronic studio research labs, hosts national and international print conferences, and encourages projects in experimental media arts, print, and publications. IEA residencies and public engagement are thanks to the Shine Joseph Endowment and the New York State Council for the Arts. You can learn more about the IEA since its founding in 1997 via our website and social media platforms. This talk is being moderated by myself, Kate Snyder, and my co-host, Lola Saidi. We are students at Alfred University participating in the Business of Art class, and we are honored to be here with you today.
Allison Leigh Holt is a neurodivergent anti-disciplinary artist and Fulbright scholar whom studied in Indonesia and is currently a PhD candidate studying at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. They have been with the residency IEA from April 13th until May 3rd. Their work is research-based, exploring divergent ways of engaging and engaging information. Their work has put them in conversation with Javanese shamas, autistic and astrophysicists, all whom Allison considers experts of research of their work combines use of sculpture, moving images, diagram, performance, light to convey their internal ideas and worldviews, often starting with a diagram as a form of blueprint for their sculptures, works made in glass, plexiglass, and resin. You can find more information about Allison and their work and website and Instagram in the chat below.
We plan on hearing from our artists for roughly the next 45 minutes, and we'll have time at the end to answer any questions our audience may have. Please use the chat feature if you're joining us via Zoom. We also have an in-person audience. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today, and thank you to Allison Leigh Holt for their time today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lola and Kate, and thank you, IEA. Thank you, Miles and Brig, especially. I love thinking about neurodiversity, about systems thinking, and about feedback structures and ways of knowing. So the work that I'm going to present with you today is 3 different projects that I'm working on right now as a PhD candidate at Rensselaer. And let's see, I'm going to start off with, can I move my presentation? There we go. So I often work in expanded cinema and in single channel video. I do performance and work in the light and space movement. All of those things are influencing the modes of work that I make. This particular piece that I'm going to start off with is a film. You're going to look at it as a single channel film, and it's an excerpt, but it's intended as an expanded cinema project that was started in the pandemic. It's called Stitching the Future with Clues. Those of you who are here, you have a printout of the script for this film, and we'll provide that to folks in the Zoom also. So it animates concepts in an article that I wrote and in Fulbright research that I did in Java. These are me following my nose through the process of research and creating work that is generating, let's see, the work that I was doing was exploring how we sense and process and exchange information, and philosophies and practices that theorize about that. So I am making a manifestation of ideas that I wrote about in an article. I was commissioned by the Ford Foundation to make this film, and it lays the groundwork for my PhD focus. So I'm going to play it now, and then we can discuss it later and come back to it later. There's a short leader.
We are born and educated into an ontology that divides up and dignifies our world. Globally, we gauge and mark our existence based on the sun above the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, London, until time comes to a grinding halt, teeters for a few months, and then just cascades out of control. Even as we try to mitigate its effects, we embody and enact the very constructs that caused them. We're bound to repeat, but maybe that's the solution. At every turn lies a chance to adjust.
It begins with a spark, an event, a phenomenon, a signal. Trees, responding to an infestation, produce insecticidal chemicals and exchange them across a network of roots and fungi called mycorrhiza. Predator ignites a murmuration of starlings, and each bird is simultaneously attracted to, repelled by, and in alignment with its neighbor, creating a perpetuating liquid swarm. Think of the sensing, processing, and exchanging of information happening here. Each is a system engaged in dialogue. Observing its own behaviors, each then uses what it knows to adjust them toward its purpose and loops on. We move through a world in never-ending. Any system looping information from its output back to its input is engaged in feedback. The internet incorporates a multiverse of looping behaviors that mirrors the human neurology, creating, using, and being used by it. Through ritual, humans align with and adjust the social, natural, and spiritual systems of which they themselves are an intrinsic part. Aim a video camera at a monitor that also displays the camera's view. What results is a self-sustaining, emergent phenomenon in 4D space. The information being sensed, processed, and exchanged in this dialogue can be tuned into as a single cross-section of self-generating imagery. This dynamic lies at the root of all intelligent behavior. Look around you. Imagine this happening between or even within other agents, because it is. Between the humans and neurological system and the mind, between two self-watching humans, between a human and another species, like a tree or a tree's roots in the forest accompanying it. All living beings participate in an astounding feedback system comprised of a community of feedback systems. This exchange of information is communication beyond language between humans and the not quite fixed world in which we find ourselves. as cohabitants in that world? Are we really concerned with reducing the harm we cause? To do that, we have to face its roots in our own thinking.
Anthropocentrism means exploiting every other species and the earth you're born of and pretending that you didn't do it. Because you ignored their side of the conversation for so long that you never hear the torment there. And when a pandemic and climate chaos finally arrive, you deny that you ever talked at all. We're doing this to them, but we're doing something much worse to ourselves. Embodied, embedded, extended, and enacted mind. 4E cognition describes humans as not only in constant conversation with other species already, but the structure of the human brain as in constant adjustment to its living environment. We are vibrant assemblages of ongoing perceptual, cognitive, and emotional processes. Through our interactions, we recreate, maintain, and preserve a mental model of our environment and of ourselves, transforming and being transformed continuously. In the face of an ever-changing environment, all organisms make efforts to maintain an inner equilibrium or autopoiesis, contending with what works in concert with their internal system and what does not, in a variety of ways. Like that murmuration of starlings, this ongoing self-adjustment is always unique. Autistic scholar Nick Walker put it like this.
Current evidence indicates that particularly high levels of synaptic connectivity and responsiveness characterize autistic brains. This tends to make the autistic individual's subjective experience more intense and chaotic than that of non-autistic individuals. On both the sensory, motor, and cognitive levels, the autistic mind tends to register both more information, and the impact of each bit of information tends to be both stronger and less predictable. All neurodivergents sense, process, and exchange information differently than most people. Many autistics embrace the personhood of non-human beings, enjoy extraordinary sense perception, and are drawn to mythological structures describing cycles and epicycles of time that reflect their own physical and psychic rhythms. Some function on a perpetual feedback loop, meaning they live in a place of repetition with slight echoes out. And as it echoes out, it changes. Like a DJ beat matching between familiar and foreign tracks, they do the same routine, but with variation, purposely introducing new elements to keep expanding the system. That's how he frames his world. Autistic rhythms differ from non-autistic ones, mostly by degree, amplifying what all humans can experience: singular focus, obsessive interests, insistence on sameness, taking pleasure in the repetition and rhythm, devotion to or contempt for rules, extreme expectations. The genetic variants giving rise to autism are part of the natural range of human biodiversity.
Often referred to as a spectrum, autism is anything but linear. Its network of interrelated traits, manifesting differently from person to person, wind up resembling the cloud, a whole lot more than the rainbow. The narrow autism phenotype at the center is at its fuzzy edge, the broader phenotype, often called Asperger's, but where are the distinctions between them? And really, where's the end of that fuzzy edge? This cloud may encompass all humans. We may all be in there, and we may have been all along. Biological attunement to feedback in neurodivergence is persistent. There's something important here. Our alienation from that attunement is what the rapacious, untenable enterprise suffocating us all relies upon. Our self-conquest through divergence is an antidote. You are tethered to historical concepts of what you are, what you can do and be, when there is no normal. You are building your model of the world this very instant. Conceive of yourselves beyond the confines of the human scale as a process involving larger processes, a building block for future forms. Witness the intelligence in living systems and exist as a companion species on the day to day. We are engaged in feedback already, whether we admit it or not. We have to begin to notice. We're beings of transformation, not accommodation, stitching the future with clues.
So that is an excerpt from a piece that's only a few minutes longer. Here we go. This is the QR code. If you want to watch the rest of it, it's the sort of embodied aspect that just is continuing through that live performance. And so those of you online, if it was not the most smooth play of that video, then I encourage you to watch it this way. I'm showing this to you because it is essentially a manifesto. I did not set out to make a manifesto, but it is the definition of a manifesto. It's like a poem in 9 separate stanzas. And the way I've been going about my PhD is trying to think of those stanzas as chapters for me to build out. So the work that I'm about to show you is how I'm going about doing that in a couple of ways in my PhD right now, in my studies. So manifestos are very expository. They are saying what needs to be said at the current time. Somebody has an idea about, what is urgent to be expressed, where they think things needs to go. And that's exactly what I was doing. The work that I'm doing now is also very expository because we're living in an historic moment of transformation and tension and danger. So for my own self, I have to put a lot of energy in navigating all of that. And so the way I'm going about making my work is just very deliberately, extending that energy creatively as much as I can, but it has to be expository. So ordinarily I would be making different things, but I feel that the times that we're living in require something very clear and speaking kind of to a broader audience. In this piece, I'm sort of using a kind of like science film, like an educational film sort of format, because it's the kind of thing that spoke to me when I was a kid and was sort of fun to play with. Everybody who's involved in making this film was what we would have called neurodivergent back then. I'm moving away from that language now, which we can talk about a little bit more. But I just feel like, setting my sights on the more brass tacks elements of this piece is what I've been doing in my PhD. And in academia, it's a hostile landscape for people like myself, and it's a pillar of colonialism. It's seeking to replicate itself. It's predetermining what constitutes knowledge. It's filled with standards and norms and preconceptions about what it means to be human. So one of the things that I've been spending a lot of my energy on in the last 2 years is directing the International Symposium on Assistive Technology for Music and Art. And last year, in 2025, I directed this session called Neurodivergent Knowing and Creating, Media Thinking, Scholarship, Pedagogy, and Crypt Curation. This took place at EMPAC. I was very lucky to have a couple of projects at EMPAC last spring. And I invited, I should say that ISATMA, the International Symposium for Assistive Technologies for Music and Art, was established in 2014 at RPI as a space to explore participation and accessibility through technological innovations and collaborations. And mostly it was focused on physical disabilities. And my focus is on non-visible disabilities, put it that way. And so I organized and facilitated this session. It's 2-hour dialogue or 2.5-hour dialogue with a couple of other things that I'll talk about in the beginning and the end. So I invited thinkers to an encounter in which our group was free from normative ways of socially relating and to gather in a way to genuinely move forward the possibilities that are inherent in the session's title. One of the richest theories that are emerging from 4E, from embodied, embedded, extended, and enacted mind, mentioned in the film, is participatory sense making. And this is a theory that Hannah D. Yeager developed with Ezekiel DePaulo and Elaine Kufari. And it is just the most generative framework for me so far. She participated in this symposium, as well as Erin Manning. Those are two people who have been really strong guiding forces for me. So one of the things that Hannah D. Yeager identifies about participatory sense making that is different. She is a cognitive scientist and a philosopher. She talks about cognitive science as a model of the mind and brain that is rooted in Western thinking, it's based on the computer. So it's talking about the human brain in comparison to a computer. This tends to set people apart. It's very static. It doesn't consider dynamics. It categorizes the world and people as well. This Western view, it sort of lends to a hegemonic perspective, and it supports extraction from people and land and knowledge bases. So participatory sense making is a human engaged knowing. So we are engaged in it, and it engages us. It's an inherently ethical approach. And like the film is talking about, it's talking and thinking about ourselves as continually transforming. We are never the same. We are always in a sort of state of flow, and our environment is constantly transforming, and we're co-determining one another. So the film is talking a lot about dialogue and thinking about ourselves as processes. This is leaning into the term enaction, thinking of ourselves as processes, as ever-changing, like this animation you're looking at, and that our environment is ever-changing, and that we are in conversation with one another. We are influencing our environment is influencing us, and we are co-determining one another and thinking together all the time. So this is one of the reasons that I made this particular session in ISATMA. Academia is asking me to think alone, to be sort of, like finding the gap in knowledge and being responsible for innovating some new space, and being the expert in that space. And that's simply not how I go about my way of being. It's not how I know the world. I know the world in dialogue. I think best in dialogue with others. When I got to IEA, I sent out an email, Brig gratefully sent out an email that was inviting folks into dialogue with me, because that's how I learn a new place. It's how I orient myself in a new environment. So the most important aspect of participatory sense-making is it's considering ourselves in relation. We are in relation with our environments, with one another, of course, but bringing a sort of literacy back to ourselves. Like, we're inherently experts in this, but we're being trained into isolation. So, so I'm going to show you a brief example of what was happening at ISATMA that year, if I can advance my slides.
That an ethos could be shared in them that could give people the excitement to keep learning. I think that's what any good teacher has just always hoped, that something could grow there, and I think we're far less capable of choosing the shape it takes than we might imagine we are. And I think if we realize that, that will give the institution far less of a hold on us, because we are the institution. That's sort of where I want to get at. We make it isn't some kind of other thing, Many of us have had administrative positions. I have, and have talked about the budgets and decided who gets admitted and who not, and have sat on dissertation committees and have been externals. And so we're all in that environment of sedimenting values of a colonial environment. And so I would prefer to be in sort of sticky, thick, uneasy, complicated conversations than to be in the blah, blah decolonization and the blah, blah, just because I don't believe in it. I don't believe that it's a rhetorical thing. I think the practices are where the work happens. And I think when the practices are still completely tethered to colonial modes of functioning, you don't have decolonization. And you don't have, you have a kind of ableism that is really potent. Now, I don't, but at the same time, what I learned from Black studies is that to be in the refusal of something is often to be mimicking the shape it likes to take. So I loved what you said, Ellen, about walking out of the room, because that's not being in a refusal, that's just being in another kind of movement. And when you're in another kind of movement, then something else begins to reverberate, and something else very, very slowly begins to percolate. I think, though, this is the last thing I'll say. I can only speak for myself, but at least once a term, I have a real battle inside myself where I want to fail a whole bunch of people in the class. And I walk to the university, and I have this like real war where I'm like, you never show up to my class. You're not listening to me. You're not learning from me. And I fail them in my imagination. They always get an A the first day of class, so I can't actually do it. But I realize how strong in me still is the feeling that if you don't do it my way, I could, and I might want to punish you. And I feel like it's, or, I suffered for this, so you have to suffer for this, or whatever way we have of talking about it. And I think that this is the pathological part of the normopathy. And it's probably good to be curious about it and hopefully have a sense of humor about it, because I think we really are in it. Like, the pathologies are very strong in us. And it's, or speaking for myself, the idea that there's a shape in which things can do better work than other shapes is quite strong. I mean, we've gone through a lot of education, and how I notice neurotypicality flowing through that is something that helps me think this through.
Okay, so I think I
And it just
I want to kind of point out a couple of things that Erin is talking about in here. First of all, before I forget, there's something that she mentions that reminds me of she's talking about Black studies that criticizing something. I can't remember exactly how she says it, but she's talking about, sometimes you take on the shape of something that you're trying to eliminate. There's a term about calling people out for behavior that you think should be different. And the concept of calling people in is what ISATMA is trying to do. So instead of shaming, or I don't know, instead of taking a defensive approach, it's enacting a space in which you wish things to be. So this is a 360-degree screen. I'm going to move forward, but probably come back real briefly to this animation because it's sort of important. Might have missed a slide. Nope, here we go. So this is what ISATMA looked like. It's really important to me to establish what I call ambient chill zones. This is like 30 minutes before and after the presentation that you just looked at, that you just watched. This, you're listening to, particularly in the very beginning, you're listening to Pauline Oliveros, and also a little bit at the end. It begins with Pauline Oliveros and goes into Sun Ra. This is the space. People are sitting on beanbags. There's a puppy running around. Everybody's very relaxed for the entire symposium. There's not a particular place you're supposed to be looking. You are able to freely come and go because I want you to be doing what you want to do. I want your body to lower its cortisol levels before we start talking about anything. It's a space for everybody. So, so this is the animation that you might have noticed playing on the screen. This is called the cloud model, and it's based on, it's my own version of what you saw in Stitching the Future with Clues, in which it's talking about the narrow phenotype and the broader phenotype. That was an atomic model that I ripped off of YouTube, and I really wanted to learn to make my own so that I could make it a little bit closer to the way I really am thinking. For the record, the narrow phenotype is not a thing. The broader phenotype is a thing. So there are inaccuracies in that film. I also want to just encourage people to make stuff. Like, if you're inaccurate, you're going to keep making work. You're going to be able to talk about it later, like I am right now. So there are lots of things that I've changed in my thinking. And in this, like, ever-changing animation, it's discussing neurodiversity, like the concept of neurodiversity, and we all have brains. There's not a single brain that everybody should be measured against. And And in that sense, when we use the term neurodivergent, diverging from what my friend Johnny Drury likes to say, who was also my facilitator at this symposium, what are you diverging from? Is there like why even use neurodiversity? We are simply brains interacting. So it's just language is a super important thing to pay attention to. So ISAPMA 26 this year, I titled Attention, Neurodiverse Sensing, Intelligences, and Dialogue in the Face of Uncertainty. Again, it was inside of a 360-degree screen, but a different one at RPI. We only have two. And it was, again, like, had surround sound. I think Crave Lab, where it took place, has 128 speaker surround. It struggled with my project in Touch Designer. I should say that the animation that you just looked at was made in Houdini, and both Touch Designer and Houdini are node-based animation. They're node-based platforms in which I'm using for animation. They're interesting to me in that you're creating systems in which you can embed other systems. It's very philosophically aligned with the work that the theories that I'm working with and how I see the world. So I'm excited to be using these platforms. Just want to name what happened at ISAPMA. Again, these ambient chill zones featured the recently passed Eliane Radic, and in 3 different sessions, Indira Allegra, myself, Joey Latka, and Sarah Kamara-Sunde paired in sessions that first talk about attention, bring attention to attention, which when we are in dialogue, it is shared attention. So bringing our attention back to attention is like, it's a very Buddhist practice. Buddhism is also very strongly informing 4E cognition. So with Indira, I'm bringing attention to attention together with Indira. And then in Quantum Touch with Joey Latka, we're performing a kind of work in progress of a performance called Quantum Touch, and this is also like a working title. We were very lucky to have the permission to work with Pauline Oliveros' expanded instrument system. And the animation that you're seeing playing on the screen, which you will see in just a minute, is also a point cloud that should be driven live by our dialogue, by brainwaves, by biodata. So it's, like showing the flows of information that are occurring between 2 people in dialogue. This is something that's very important to my work right now, is trying to create a model of the flows of information that are occurring between 2 people in dialogue and that are kind of taking on their own autonomous form. So that project, Quantum Touch, is what I'm working on here at IEA. And I'll show you a little bit more of it. But one of the real important parts is that it's thinking of ourselves as processes, right? We're ever changing. We're having this sort of like our dialogue is sort of our baby in a way. It's this new thing that is coming into form live between us. And it's an analog in a sense for that same occurrence happening between all intelligent systems, between ourselves and our environments, between myself and my laptop, definitely between myself and my phone, right? Like all of the things that we are in relation with, including the chair that I'm sitting on. I'm in relation with all of the things that I am engaged with in my world. And I'm imagining those flows with this project. So in the very last session, the Hudson River Dialogue Workshop, we go outside. So take that imagining of those flows out into the world, and let's imagine ourselves in dialogue with the power station that we're walking past, with the creek and the trees. It was a gorgeous day, super, like, trees are just budding. It was a lovely spring day to experience that with Sarah Cameron Cindy. So this is what the space looked like this year. And it's pretty similar, but Crave Lab has a little bit more of a square shape. This right here in the center, if you can see my cursor, is the expanded instrument system, in which Pauline designed a system with others that can, in our case, capture our voices and sort of feed them back and feed them forward in time, so we can very fluidly jam with our dialogue that we're having. Oops, I'm going to pause this real quick. The project that we were, I can't go back. So let's look at this for a second, and I'll go back to this project. Dialogue about dialogue is the baby step, the sort of draft for quantum touch. But I want to show it to you because it is it's pretty close to what I'm hoping to have actually happen in a performative situation. So let's look at it. You can ask questions about it later. And it's in this kind of, liquid exchange.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there are many levels of information going in between, and the agent always has a physical manifestation of some sort. And it's starting to overload my mind in imagining all those different levels. There's so much that could be visualized in between. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could make it visual so that we can actually see it, but in my mind, certainly there are many levels of information going back and forth.
So these, instead of dots, you're seeing what I created in Houdini are about. Can I pause this? I'm gonna try to go forward. Those instead of dots, they're like spheres of water that are conducting the light, that are in the same space of that video, so you can see the light as they're passing back and forth across the windows. Houdini's amazing. So the recordings for ISATMA occurred right before I started IEA, this residency. I don't have finished documentation for it, but this is what the overhead camera saw, and this is just us performing the expanded instrument system live, and the projections that you see are recorded. They're not live. The projection mapping software actually kind of freaked out with Touch Designer, even the recorded stuff that I created. So you see these kind of panels instead of it being a totally smooth projection. This is what the project looks like in Touch Designer. So there's, just as I was mentioning earlier, you're creating a network. Sometimes you can dive inside of these. For anybody that's not familiar with node-based software, this thing that says RGBA delay, you can dive inside of there and you'll see another network, which is creating the effect that this actor is doing, this operator. So the entire, and I just hit a keyboard I just hit a key on the keyboard that changed the system when you saw that shift happen just there. So you can sort of reseed your point cloud and how it flows. You can change things in live performance that way. So this is what I'm hoping to work on, or what I'm going to work on at IEA. Very much hope to use the motion control suit that Eric Souther purchased for IEA. He's a friend of mine. We brought him to Rensselaer in January to do a workshop on Touch Designer. So yeah, just wanted to say one more thing, that enaction is thinking of ourselves as processes that are nested within processes, that we are these ever-changing complex adaptive systems in relation with other complex adaptive systems. And that is systems thinking in short. So I'll close there, and I'm happy to be in dialogue with you.
So we're now going to open the discussion up for the audience. If anyone has any questions, you can shout them out or put them in the chat.
You want to start us off with a question?
Yes.
You might have to stand closer so they can hear you.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
I can sit and ask my question and switch with you. So my question is, how much control do you want viewers to have when interpreting your work? Do you want to be in control of that, or do you want the control to be pushed onto them?
Sure. Excuse me. Well, ultimately, making work, thinking about especially complex adaptive systems, I want us to be making the work together. And at the same time, I have to admit, I have kind of a director's personality. Like, I want to be making this symposium, directing it in a particular way, and, bringing people together with a focus. So it's kind of, I think, setting conditions for a process, and allowing it to evolve on its own is my ideal goal at this point. Yeah. And it's actually a big challenge to move out of the consideration of yourself as somebody who's, I don't know, creating something that has to be just so. And when we think about art making for a market, you're subconsciously thinking about its accessibility to a broad audience, or it being sellable. All of those things are part of a value system that I've never benefited from, and I don't think is important for the world that we're moving into. So thinking about what art is and how we want to engage in it, and how it can be, what it can be, is really important now. There are a couple of things that I didn't say. Can I say a couple of things? I wanna make a couple of comments about ISATMA that I didn't get to make. For ISATMA 26, I was calling it an art, science, and technology platform for practicing complexity through the intersection of neurodiverse and queer attention. So those two modes of attention are biologically persistent, that in neurodiverse sensing that attention is something that is non-discriminate. You know, we're in dialogue with everything in it, like considering heterogeneous intelligences all around you speaking to you. So neurodiverse folks sometimes are able to hear very clearly what's happening in the other room, you know, like it's happening right next to them. So that may also be the case when you're walking outside. You know, the things that you're surrounded by are actually alive and speaking to you. They're not deadened. So folks who are unable to be educated into the ontology that things are thingified, like the world is dead around you. They're constantly hearing things. They're constantly in relation. But I wanted to also say that the landmark decisions against Meta and Alphabet a couple of weeks ago for what distinguished Princeton scholar D. Graham Burnett, PhD, calls human fracking. Our attention and its material effects has become the most valuable commodity on the planet. And it's because it's always been humanity's most phenomenal and revolutionary technology. So that was the purpose of my my attention to attention in ISATMA 26. Yeah. Yeah. No, go for it.
This is a theoretical question, I guess, or one on maybe semantics, but I was struck in your video by the what I saw as kind of like a return to the idea of feedback. Like, to me, coming out of like art history and like early video, the idea of feedback was that it was like closed, right? Like, so like Moderna Varela and then like Luhmann, who were like doing the autopoietic thing, right? To my mind, that's very anti-feedback, right? Or it was sort of a model that got away from feedback as this like, even the drawing, it does create the infinity, but it still is closed. Like, I mean, infinity's not closed, right? But the image is closed.
Sure.
So I think I was just struck by the use of feedback there, because to me that it seems like the idea of feedback seems quite different than like the Luhmann Varela, Jane Bennett, or whoever he was doing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think that was what like Donna Haraway tried to expand on autopoiesis by terming it sympoiesis, right? For exactly what you're talking about. And I do think that the auto at the beginning of that term does leave the door open for thinking about the self too much. So, you know, using the sympoiesis, we're doing this together, right? Like we're all in it together. I think I'm of two minds with that. I think that what Donna Haraway is getting at with sympoiesis is embedded in that concept, but the way it's talked about, it's just kind of like it didn't get broadened enough in dialogue and discourse for that to actually for the fact that what Maturana and Varela are identifying in the term autopoiesis is something that is very fluid. It's not closed. We're obviously there's no meaningful difference between this body and the other bodies in this room. You know, and COVID taught us that, right? And in fact, the things that are the most salient in the conversation you and I are having right now are the relation that we're having, because I can't even see you that clearly. You can see me, right? But I can't even see you. So I can talk to you without even knowing who you are. We can have we share history, we share language, we share this room. And in fact, we're sharing molecules. We're breathing the same air, right? So there's not a meaningful difference between you and me, really. And I think that is kind of embedded in the concept of autopoiesis. So the feedback is, and the infinity symbol, these are symbols and they're the baby step. They're kind of like the most condensed form of the concept. And that's why I keep coming back to the concept of processes nested within processes and relationality. What participatory sense making is bringing a lot of attention to is the flows, right? Those flows are occurring between the different biological like systems in my body. And we have to use symbols, but it's important to have these kinds of conversations. Feedback is something that is totally like the fabric of the universe, you know? Yeah.
Oh. You know, I have a different feeling about feedback because it's a stabilizing system. And so when I think of, let's say, chemistry, there's that concept of morphogenic, which means that the thing in chemistry, it's going to do what it does. You can't stop it. You can't. So like if you blow a bubble, it's going to be this sphere and it's going to respond however it does. There's nothing you can do to change that. And then if two bubbles come together, they make a flat plane. That's what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's water in the ground, the trees, like little roots, are going to go to it. It's not an intelligence. Can't be helped. It's going to do it. You can't stop it. You can take the water away and then something else will happen. And so for me, feedback is that same kind of thing. It's always looking to stabilize, especially in video. Even if you move the camera, we see this thing happen, right? But that thing happening is a pattern. It's trying to stabilize, and it will keep doing that thing. It won't go do something else. You know, it won't, you know, and so that idea of feedback to me is so stabilizing, it's so morphogenic that I often think that's either what humanity is doing. We are destined to consume the planet and then consume ourselves. We can't help it. And the fact is, no matter how we talk about it, it continues and continues. Morphogenically, it's just not going to stop. The same way feedback doesn't stop. You know, our conversations, our sharing of the air, you know, and in fact, maybe information theory tells us that if information doesn't fit the laws of physics, then we have to have a different law of physics for information. But we don't.
Well, we're beginning to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's frustrating at RPI a little bit because we have a quantum computer on our campus. And it's something that is like, it's a really rarefied thing. We're the first to have that, a university to have a quantum computer. And like, clearly those things are going to be benefiting certain people. It's not something that's going to be super accessible, but what is, you know, what quantum computing is making possible is to show the material effects of quantum mechanics, and helping, you know, people who are theorists think through those things. So I think, like, of course, what you're bringing up is really important, and I have like a limited expertise because I'm a synthesist and I'm also just an artist. I'm not an expert in physics, you know, but I am drawing upon what I know. I think that it's also a Western view for considering humans to be stuck in a particular mode, that they're, you know, going to consume the planet, like that is inherently what we are going to do, you know, and that's the only possibility. In fact, we are extremely heterogeneous, and the systems that we've constructed and that we're a part of have a particular nature, but we are the ones who we are those systems. You know, like Erin Manning was saying in her comments in ISATMA, We are academia. We make decisions about how things go. I am curious to talk more about feedback with you particularly because I think that feedback cascades out of control. You know, it does, you have to reseed feedback. It does go away. You know, it doesn't always go on and on and on. You know, it's influenced by other feedback systems. If you think about it in a relational way, and I may be a little bit inaccurate in the way I'm using the term feedback as analogous or like directly parallel with dialogue. You know, I'm thinking about the sensing and processing and exchanging of information that is occurring in dialogue as feedback, that you and I are creating a sort of system, but our conversation can cascade out of control. We can have an argument and walk away. You know, it's up to us to decide the nature of what occurs in our conversation. And if we're in circumstances that, like if we're the last two people on the planet, then our conversation can be extremely generative. Like we can have to work very hard together to come to another concept of what we are and what's possible in our relationality, you know? So I'm very strongly a believer in the heterogeneity of living things, of life, and of the possibility.
Yeah, I'm called heterodyne, so dynamic difference.
Heterodyne? Heterodyne, yeah. Yes, right.
What's someone say the quantum leap, quantum computer,
Mm-hmm.
which is weird, and it's big, but it's small, because you go from A to B, and the question is, what's in between?
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There's no step in between. So there's just a state of, I don't know what you call it. It's interesting to me to know if quantum computers, what's actually happening.
I know. Dude, it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to think about. Quantum computing is not easy. And in fact, a lot of quantum computing is really using a lot of classical computing. You know, there's very little like, you know, pure quantum computation going on, but it's going there and it will change the way we think about ourselves. It will change the way we think about matter. You know, I mean, clearly we know that observation of particles is determinate of the state of that particle, right? Like it changes what's possible for that particle. Your attention to it influences the state of the particle. That's a material result, you know, that shows what's actually occurring, and it's messy. It is not like the question about a closed system. I honestly am not 100% sure I understand what a closed system could be, you know, because like plastic creates a closed system, you know, so that's kind of like the closest thing I can imagine a closed system being in material terms. Because
plasticity becomes the metaphor for expansion.
Yes.
So it turns plastic against itself.
Yes, right. It's true. Yeah, there are lots of different terms that seem to, you know, differ from what you expect them to be about. There was one other thing that I wanted to be sure that I said. The night before ISAPMA 26 occurred was the day that President Trump threatened to annihilate an entire civilization. So I put together attention, neurodiverse sensing, intelligences, and dialogue in the face of uncertainty to help with understanding phenomena. I'm going to read something real quick. And to make sense of, rather than catastrophize what we're undergoing as a species, by conceiving and experiencing ourselves as processes nested within processes. So practically speaking, ISAPMA is also a means of practicing the kinds of thinking together and community that is about to become essential. I had identified that the night before ISATMA, Trump threatened to end the entire civilization, quote, of Iran. The isolationist path that we remain on is shifting the international system, which is already creating ripple effects in the global economy. All manner of fuel reserves are limited. According to Robert Pape, professor of political science and the director of Chicago Project on Security and Terrorism at the University of Chicago, in the first 45 days of these kinds of events, and the time that I wrote this was day 45 of the US-Israeli war against Iran, prices rise and disruptions occur in normal flow of goods. We're already seeing that in fuel prices, of course. So after 60 days, which is the end of April, shortages begin. After 90 days, which is the end of May, economic contraction begins. Commodities will just not be there. So I'm paraphrasing Pape, who made these comments on the program Background Briefing, if you're interested in checking that. His latest article on his Substack is the escalation his Substack, The Escalation Trap, is the world's economy will change abruptly in the next 10 days, but he's hardly alone in his assessment, and 10 days is tomorrow. So tomorrow is the end of the ceasefire between the United States, Israel, and Iran. So to not only endure this, but remain guided by beauty and brilliance and creativity and compassion, we must restore our literacy in the flows occurring within and between us to grow our fluency in our relationality. And I'm really excited to be doing that with you while I'm here at IEA. I'm super excited to hear any thoughts about quantum touch, because that's the way that I'm trying to just make an embodiment of the flows and the messy flows. You know, I'm interested in what the flows of an argument might look like, you know, not just the groovy flows. So, but I wanted to also offer any other questions, or if there are questions online. I just wanted to make sure I got those statements in there, because it's such a messed up time that we're living through right now. And I, you know, it's the purpose of the work that I'm making is just to try to, I guess, think through these things and make spaces in which we can have conversations and make it more normal to be thinking about how, what our relationality is and how it can be seen in different scales. You know, I definitely consider the United States a complex adaptive system. Can we see ourselves in the United States and in the interactions that it's having globally? Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here.
Let me just say one more quick thing.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you don't have, okay. I would just like to quickly thank everybody. Thank you, Allison Leigh Holt, for taking their time today to join us. You could find them at their website at oilyuan.com and on Instagram at oilyuan. This recorded artist talk and others will be available on the IEA's YouTube channel by the end of the week. I would like to thank our audience today for being here with us and the great questions that were asked. Thank you again to our sponsors at the Shine Joseph Endowment and the New York State Council for the Arts for making this possible. Have a good afternoon, everyone. That's all I got. But thank you. Thank you.